Hello fellow Wasteland wanderers, and welcome back to the Bigger Pixel with your host, the Gaming Mandroid, where this week we are going to be continuing our perks examination series by looking at the entire endurance tree and seeing which perks we want to keep and which ones are worth passing up, and just kind of talking about each of them in detail and seeing what makes them good or what makes them bad. So the very first thing we want to ask ourselves and take a look at is, what does endurance itself do for you as a statistic? Well, just a prefix, I'd say endurance is probably one of the best stats in the game as far as what it does for you in and of itself for having a point of endurance. Mainly what it affects is two things: your total hit points and the rate at which your action points are depleted while sprinting. Okay, and what does that mean? Okay, so let's just look at the math here, the statistics breakdown. Your total hit points is based off of this formula. It's 80 plus your endurance times 5. Okay, so that means that with an endurance of 10, your base health is going to be 130 at level 1. Okay? It also affects how much health you gain per level. And the formula for that is 2.5 plus parentheses your endurance times 0.5 parentheses. Okay? So that means that your total hit points can be determined this way. It's 80 plus your endurance times 5 plus parentheses your hit points per level times your current character level. Okay, so let's just do a little example for 1 endurance at level 10 versus 10 endurance at level 10. So with 1 endurance, your base health would be 80 plus 5. So 85 is your base health, plus 2.5 plus 1 times 0.5. So you're getting 3 hit points per level, and you're level 10. Now, I'm sorry, it's actually current character level minus 1 for this grand total, because it doesn't count the first level, so you level up for the first time at level 2. So you would gain 27 health points on top of your 85, so that's 112 health for 1 endurance. Now at the same level, level 10, with 10 endurance, you're going to be looking at a starting health of 130, already way past 112, right? 130, and then you're going to be gaining 7.5 health per level. So 7.5 times 1075 minus 7.5, that's 67.5. So 67.5 plus your 130, and then it rounds down, so 197. 197 health versus 112. So a big difference, and that's just from level 10. Of course, these effects, the hit points per level is going to be more and more useful the higher level you are. And the great part about this is what makes endurance one of the best stats, I'd say, as far as what the stat itself does for you, is that endurance is completely retroactive. So it doesn't matter if you wait until level 50 to get that extra point of endurance, it's worth all the health you would have gained the whole way before. So it's a great stat to boost even in your late game. In fact, generally I would say when it comes to boosting your endurance, it makes a little more sense to deprioritize it and take it a little bit later, because unlike something like intelligence, where you're trying to maximize your experience gain, you want to do that as early as possible so that you have that extra experience gain the whole way. Well, with endurance, the health points are all retroactive, so you don't have to worry about taking it right off the bat. Now, the other effect is the action point drain while sprinting. Now, we did do a little bit of testing here, trying to see if other AP draining abilities were affected by your endurance stats, such as holding your breath when aiming the scope and some other things. But the answer is no. Those are unaffected. It just affects your sprinting rate. And the formula for that is to determine how many action points it costs you per second. That's parentheses 1.05 minus 0.05 times your endurance, parentheses times 12. Okay, so with an endurance of 1, it's going to cost you 12 action points per second. With an endurance of 10, it's going to cost you half that. It's going to cost you 6 action points per second. Okay, so, and we have the footage here of us running once with an endurance of 1 and then running again with an endurance of 10. And as you can see, it's a marked difference. You'll be able to sprint twice as far. And of course, moving target can affect this as well, but we're not going to get into that. Okay, so let's get right in and take a look at the very first perk on the endurance tree, and that perk is Toughness. At the first rank, it will give you a plus 10 damage resistance. That's towards basic ballistic damage. At the second rank, an additional 10. At the third, an additional 10. At the fourth, you're up to plus 40. At the fifth, plus 50. So this is not a complex perk. There isn't too much to say about it. It is clear what it does. Plus 10 damage resistance, ballistic damage resistance per rank that you take in it. But is it worth your time? I would say essentially no, especially not those final ranks. I mean, if you're looking at rank 4 and 5, where the level requirement is 31 and 46, okay, by the time you're level 31 or let alone 46, an additional plus 10 damage resistance is pretty small. A very small factor in what it's going to do for you at this level, because at this point your enemies are dealing a lot more damage, you're dealing a lot more damage, the stakes are higher, and 10 points of damage resistance just doesn't mean as much as it did at those lower levels. So this is very similar to what I said in Perception when it came to Refractor. I don't think this perk is very good. The only reason I think you should take it is if you're playing a particular way, maybe you're playing favorites with what you want to wear and you want something cosmetic that isn't really protecting you very much, or maybe you're doing the melee build. We recommend taking a little bit of Toughness in our Grognak build, for example, because he misses out on a legitimate chest piece by wearing Grognak's costume. So for that reason, we took, I don't know, like 3 ranks of Toughness or something like that. So generally my advice with this perk is that in most cases you're not going to need it at all, and you should probably pass it up altogether. But if you do feel in the early game like you need a little bit of extra damage resistance, maybe the first tops, I'd say 3 ranks might be useful as you're at those lower levels. But those final 2 ranks, by the time you're level 31, 46, it's just a waste. Plus 10 damage resistance is just not doing that much for you. So this perk is not the best, okay? And that's probably why it's at the tier 1 position. Okay, so next up we have Lead Belly, which requires an endurance of 2 to take this perk. There are 3 ranks available. At the first rank, your digestive tract has adjusted to the weirdness of the Wasteland. Take less radiation from eating or drinking. And then the next rank, take even less radiation from eating and drinking. And then at the third rank, you will take no radiation from eating or drinking. Now, these descriptions are pretty waffly. I'm not sure what exactly the percentage reduction is on these foods, but let's examine it and think about it here, okay? Now, drinking water, or generally if you're drinking water, I would say you're probably drinking it from, you know, an in-game puddle or something, or maybe the sink. I think you can drink at sinks as well, and fountains and whatnot. So those all have a flat rate of radiation coming from them, but then there's also, you know, items in your inventory that are affected by this that have varying degrees of radiation, like, you know, cram, Blanco mac and cheese, dirty water, all that stuff. So Lead Belly will reduce the radiation from any of these sources, right? But is it really worth it? Well, I would say no, not at all, because first of all, those items like cram and Blanco and the frozen Salisbury steaks and all those things that this perk affects are really bad. Like, there's no need for them. All they do is heal you, and they don't even heal you very much, and they come with the radiation. Why take a perk just to get rid of the radiation when you can just take a stim pack? It heals you more. It doesn't come with any radiation cost. So, you know, those items are already bad items in the first place. Why bother taking a bunch of perks? And you have to take 3. Okay, like, this effect, I would only say is worth it to get to that third level where there's no radiation at all. But why would you do all this? I mean, even if you really want to eat that stuff and drink the water and then you get the radiation on yourself, it's really easy to get rid of your rads in this game. Rads are really just not that big a concern in this game. They're not that dangerous. You can just take some rad away, take some rad X before you drink the water. This perk is just really not necessary. Please don't take Lead Belly. You don't need it, okay? Maybe we'll see in the new survival mode, you know, when it comes to making sure you filled your thirst meter. Maybe it'll be a little bit more useful then. Right now, you really don't need this perk. Pass it up, guys, okay? Because it doesn't even apply to everything that you can eat. And even then, 3 ranks just to take it down to nothing? No, not worth it. Maybe if it was a two perk ranks total, and on the second rank there was no radiation, maybe then. But you just don't need it, okay? Alrighty, moving on to the next perk in our third tier slot on the endurance tree. That is the Life Giver perk. It has 3 ranks, and basically each rank is going to do the same thing in that it gives you plus 20 to your maximum health. And then at the final rank, in addition to that 20 extra health, you will also gain the ability to regenerate health. Now, we did our best at the Bigger Pixel here to measure roughly how much that life regeneration is. We've discovered it to be about 5 points per second, 5 points of health per second. I'm assuming that that's a flat rate of health per second, and hopefully it's not based on some percentage of our total health. If that is the case, then it might not be equal to 5 points per health, 5 points per second for you. I'm not sure, but hopefully that's a flat healing amount per second. So that hopefully that's accurate. Now, is Life Giver worth it? I mean, there's not too much complexity to talk about here as far as what it does. It gives you 60 extra health. And the regenerative ability is nice. As far as whether it's worth it or not, it's nice, but it's not going to save you in combat. It's not fast enough. It's not a strong enough regeneration to save you in combat. So really all it's doing for you is removing a little bit of the headache of managing your health bar between combats. So let's say you finish out a fight with 80%. You don't have to just shove a stim pack in yourself. You're probably going to be fine for about 1 minute later. You'll be up to full health, you know, because all you have to do is keep your head down for a short while. So it's useful in that sense as far as the regeneration goes, but it's not going to save you in combat. And the question here is the perk worth it? Unfortunately, it's very subjective. It depends on how much health you have, depends on what difficulty you're playing on, and it depends on what level you are and what your total endurance is. So that's a lot of different factors. So it's hard for me to say, yes, you should take this, no, you shouldn't take this. But I will make one point just to demonstrate perhaps a pretty good reasoning for why you shouldn't take this. So I did a little bit of math to make a comparison. So what I did was I wanted to compare 2 characters at level 22. I don't know why I did 22. I guess since you can get the final rank at 20. So we're imagining that our first character at rank 20 goes ahead and takes Life Giver 1, and then at 21 takes Life Giver 2, and then at 22 takes Life Giver 3, right? Versus our other character who from level 20 to 22 is just going to increase their endurance 3 times, okay? And let's see what happens by the end at level 22. So at level 22, the first person who's going with Life Giver, they have an endurance of 3, right? We're going to say minimum, you need 3 endurance to get Life Giver, right? So their starting health is going to be 95 plus 21 times 4, so 84. 95 and 84, 179 health is their base health, but now they're getting plus 60 on top. So that gives them 239 health at level 22, right? Okay, so now let's look at our other example where instead of taking Life Giver, we're just going to increase our endurance 3 times. So at the end of level 22, our endurance is 6. That gives us a starting health of 110, and then we get 5.5 hit points per level, so 21 times 5.5. Altogether, we come out with a total health of 225. 225 versus 239. Now, yes, the Life Giver got a little bit more health, 14 more health, but I need to point this out to you. That is first of all, a very small margin. And they do have the regenerative ability as well, which is kind of nice, but that's a small margin, and especially when you think about this. If you either increase your endurance 1 more point, then that margin disappears. Or if you just wait 10 levels, by level 32, the gap will have closed. And at that point, every level after that, levels 33 and above, the person who took the 3 extra endurance is going to be the one with the most health. So this is what I'm talking about. It's very contextual whether you want to take Life Giver. If you really feel like you don't have health, it's not that bad. I wouldn't recommend, if you're going down the Life Giver route, I hope you're going the whole way, because you need that regenerative ability to really justify it. Because as I've shown here, as the levels go on, you can get 20 health easily just by increasing 1 endurance point. If you're level 50, increasing your endurance by 1 level is going to get you 20 health. So why take Life Giver? Unless you're going to take it all 3 times and get the regeneration, because otherwise there's no need. Alrighty, so next up on the 4th tier perk of the endurance tree is Chem Resistant. Now, Chem Resistant has only 2 ranks. On the first rank, it will make you half as likely to become addicted to drugs, and at the second rank, it will make it impossible for you to become addicted to drugs. Now, I think that this is a fantastic perk. I think drugs, if you didn't know, drugs are very, very potent in this game. They're powerful, they're useful. I don't want to get in too much to talking about drugs on the whole, but they're very strong, they're very useful. I mean, you can get effects from things like one psycho, minus 25% damage that you're receiving, plus 25% damage that you're dealing. I mean, that's an incredible effect. And if you're augmenting that with chemist to increase the duration, that's just so good. But I don't want to get into that too much. I think drugs are worth using in this game, which is generally why Chem Resistant might be worth taking. Now, Chem Resistant is only going to get you out of the addictions. So let's talk about the addictions symptoms of various drugs. Well, the way it works is you have roughly, before you take any of these perks, about, at least according to what I'm reading here, about 20% chance to get addicted to a drug. So if you take it 5 times, there's a good chance you're going to get addicted to it. And the way these addictions work is based on kind of mother drugs. So there's only a couple of addictions you can get. You can get addicted to buff out drugs, and it all buff out related. So buff out, buff jet, or buff tats. You take those, you can get addicted to buff out. You can get addicted to Fury, Jet, Excel, Mentats, Psycho, Overdrive, Day Tripper, Daddy-O, and then all alcohols together have just one form of addiction, right? And Chem Resistant is not going to make you resistant to being addicted to alcohol, by the way. That's covered in another perk in the Charisma tree, Party Boy or Party Girl. So this is going to help you with all the other drugs, all the other addictions. Now, like I said, you have a starting of about 20% chance to get addicted to one of these drugs, which is pretty low. So with the first rank, you'll be down to about 10% chance to get addicted, which is very low. And then at the second rank, you just don't have to worry about it at all. You can be popping all kinds of drugs all the time and never have to worry about it. But are these withdrawals that big a deal? Let's examine that. Most of them come with a debuff to 2 of your special stats. So, for example, with Buff Out, the withdrawal is -1 strength and -1 endurance. With Mentats, it's only -1 charisma. With Psycho, it's -1 strength, and then in this case, -10 damage resist. Overdrive, -1 strength, -1 endurance. Okay, so most of them, they're going to be affecting your special stats. The worst one to get addicted to, I'd say, is Excel, because that's going to reduce all of your special stats by 1. But none of these are really that big a deal. The most common factor is losing 1 strength. So if you're a melee build and then you're addicted to several things, it might become a headache. You could have as much as -5 to your strength, which would be bad. But the question is, are the addictions really that big an issue? I mean, you can remove your addictions by using Addictol, which can be bought from lots of different medics, by drinking a refreshing beverage, which you can craft yourself at a chemistry station. None of the ingredients are that rare, but there are quite a few ingredients to it. Or you can just go to a doctor and pay a minuscule, like, I don't know, 40 caps or something, and he'll remove all of your addictions. So addictions are not very hard to get rid of, honestly. However, that being said, I do still think that this is a great perk. I mean, I think this is actually one of the best perks on the endurance tree. It's reasonably placed at 4th tier, and if you're going to be using drugs a lot, then this is great to just remove the headache of having to worry about your addictions. And drugs really are potent. They really are useful in this game. They can do so much for you when you stack them all on top of each other at once. So overall, I think this perk is worth it. I think it's mostly worth it. If you're only using drugs a little bit, don't bother. Don't go out of your way. Definitely don't go out of your way to get it. If you're just using drugs here and there, all you have to do is carry around an Addictol or 2. Or worst case scenario, suffer through what is ultimately a minor debuff until the next time you're in town, and then get it removed. But if you're going to go the melee route, it has a lot of drugs that they want to use. That's probably why a lot of the debuffs for addiction are related to strength. So it depends on your character. It depends on how much you're using drugs. I would say that this is a good perk, but if you're not using drugs much, then go ahead and pass it up. Okay, so next up at the 5th tier perk on the endurance tree is Aquaboy or Aqua Girl. This has 2 ranks to the perk. At the first level, water is your ally. You no longer take radiation damage from swimming, and you can breathe underwater. At the second rank, you become totally undetectable while submerged. Okay, so is this worth it? I would right off the bat say no, this perk is not worth it. It's not worth your time. Now, the first rank, I would say, okay, the first rank is definitely more useful than the second rank. Let's quickly dismiss the second rank. Why is being undetectable in water not a useful ability? Well, I'll tell you right now. It's because there aren't many enemies that are near water in Fallout 4. There's only a couple areas, so we have some footage of us here in Libertalia. It's one of the only places where there's like a bunch of enemies around and you can like, you know, sneak up on them via the water. Other than that, who else are you going to find by water? Just Mirelurks every once in a while? The vast majority of combat and exploring that you're going to do is going to be on the mainland. And what's the point? And what's even the point? Once you do become undetectable, yes, okay, so you can either approach in stealth or retreat in stealth via the water, right? But you can't attack from it. You can't get any sneak attacks or anything. You can't, you know, it doesn't even really help you that much. Even when there are enemies around, it doesn't really do much for you. So the second rank, I would say, is very much not worth it. Now, the first rank does, it's a perk of convenience. It's going to mean that you don't have to necessarily take a Rad-X every single time you want to swim, and you also don't have to worry about drowning. But are those really major concerns? I don't think so. A Rad-X or a Rad Resistant suit, hazmat suit, are both easy to come by, and swimming is only occasionally necessary in the first place. And as far as drowning, being able to breathe underwater, the game already gives you a very generous breath meter. There are very few occasions when you need to be underwater in the first place, so your risk of drowning is just not very high. I will give the first rank a little bit of credit. It is a perk of convenience. It is kind of nice to be able to swim without taking radiation, without having to go into your menu and take a Rad-X or something like that. It can make occasionally, you know, a couple shortcuts just kind of open on the big map when you're just like, I don't care, I'll just swim right across this lake. That's kind of nice, but overall this perk just doesn't do that much for you. It's very easy to avoid water. Being able to breathe underwater, it doesn't really do anything for you, and what's the point of sneaking up on an enemy from the water anyways? You're just going to become revealed the moment you get out of the water to actually start attacking. So I would say go ahead, pass up Aquaboy or Aqua Girl. Already up next at the tier 6 rank of endurance, the perk is Rad Resistant, and it has 3 levels, and for each level that you take of this perk, you will gain an additional 10 radiation resistance. And is it worth it? I would say no, definitely not. Definitely don't take this perk. This is just like Toughness that we talked about earlier in this video, or Refractor that we talked about in our Perception video. This is one of several just resistance perks, and this is the worst one by far. Out of Toughness or Refractor, this one is by far the worst. Okay, first of all, there's only one weapon that attacks you with radiation. That's the Gamma Gun. Okay, and it's not that likely that you're going to get attacked by it. So taking this perk just for that would be ridiculous. As far as the environmental concern of radiation, yeah, it's there. It's in the water. It's in the glowing sea. But 30 points of radiation resistance isn't even that much. If you put 3 perks into this, and now you have 30 Rad Resist, that's not even that much. For example, we have footage here of us going around in the glowing sea, with the perk, right? Without the perk, with the perk, right? And then we go back to without the perk and just put on a hazmat suit. And guess what? The hazmat suit is better. So why would you take this perk? I mean, there's just no need. I could go on and on about how radiation is not a major concern in this game. It's really not, okay? I mean, there's the hazmat suits and the Rad-X to protect you from getting it in the first place. And then there's the Radaway and doctors to remove it once it's there. Plus refreshing beverages. There's plenty of ways. So radiation is just not a headache. You shouldn't need to boost your radiation resistance. I mean, if you really want like a little bit of an extra point just to remove some of the headache of minor things like swimming, just get the lead lining mod for your armor. That's a much better solution. Okay, up next at the 7th tier slot of the endurance tree is the Adamantium Skeleton perk. Okay, so at the first level, your skeleton has been infused with indestructible metal, reducing limb damage by 30%. At the next level, the limb damage is reduced by 60%. And at the final level, you take no limb damage. So therefore, it would be impossible for your limbs to become crippled. Now, is this worth it? I think that this is a good perk, but I think it's just not in a great place all the way up here at 7 endurance. I think if it was a little bit more accessible, I could more freely recommend it. But ultimately where it's at, I think it costs you a little bit too much in special stats to get up to here at 7. I certainly wouldn't go out of my way to get this perk. Now, I think it's nice to have your limbs protected, but honestly, limb destruction doesn't happen quite often enough that I think even then I still wouldn't go all the way to the 3rd rank. I think I'd just go to the 2nd rank, and that would probably stop you from virtually ever having your limbs destroyed, injured in the first place anyways, because it's generally not an issue. Really, it's only like explosives that are likely to take out your legs or something like that. But in general, I don't find myself being crippled very often. And if you are crippled, you can get out of it so quickly and easily that it's really not that big a deal. Just by popping a stim pack, your limbs are going to heal up in a matter of like 1 or 2 seconds, you know? So that's really fast. Now, I will say, as an important caveat, I think that this perk is a little bit more useful if you're playing on survival mode, where your limbs are not going to repair themselves nearly as quickly just because you hit that stim pack button. So in those cases, you know, you don't want to be left out in the open, unable to move because your legs are crippled, and you can't really repair it in the middle of combat. So I think Adamantium Skeleton can be worth it if you already have the endurance and you're on survival and you only take like the first 1 or 2 ranks. So really, that should say it all, is that it's that conditional to be worth it. Alrighty, we're getting to the top tier perks now. At an endurance of 8, you have access to the Cannibal perk. Feast on mortal flesh to heal your wounds. Eating human corpses restores health. How much health is that? That is 25 health for the record. To eat a human corpse at rank 1, 25 health. At rank 2, you now have the ability to also eat ghoul or super mutant corpses. It's still 25 health. At rank 3, you can now eat all 3 of those, human, ghoul, or super mutant corpses, but the healing amount is now doubled up to 50. So you can get 50 health from each corpse. Is this perk worth it? Generally speaking, short answer, no. You don't need it. You can heal yourself with stim packs. You probably have tons of health anyways if you have 8 endurance. You just don't need it. This is good for role-playing an evil character. This is like the only perk that's any good for role-playing an evil character. So if you're evil and you're desperate, I don't blame you. Maybe this is what you need. I don't know, I guess Night Person seems a little nefarious with a vampire on it. Maybe this is what you need for roleplay reasons. I will say this, one caveat. In my recent playthrough on survival mode with our Huntsman build, check it out if you haven't seen it, I discovered that Cannibal was a huge help to me. But only because I was on survival difficulty. Okay? I don't think this perk is worth it at all unless you're on survival difficulty. And even then, I think I only found it so useful because of the roleplay I was doing. So I was refusing to use stim packs in my entire playthrough. So using the bodies as a source of health was very useful to me, and it was also a lot of fun. And it was, you know, it's got a cool animation too, you know, whatnot. Although the animation can get tiring, it's a little long. If you've been playing for hours and hours and hours and you've seen it a million times, it's not so exciting anymore. But I think the vast majority of characters in the vast majority of situations is not going to need Cannibal, is not going to have much of a use for it. So, generally speaking, pass this perk up. Okay, next up, the 9th tier, almost last perk on the endurance tree is Ghoulish. Okay, sure, you're still human. On the outside, radiation now regenerates your lost health. The 2nd rank, it regenerates even more of your health. At the 3rd rank, even more of your lost health. And some feral ghouls will randomly become friendly. Okay, is this perk worth it? No, 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 no. I don't know what Bethesda was thinking, especially putting this at tier 9, as if this was like a really good perk. This is a terrible perk that has virtually no application or appeal. Just for the record, to demystify the descriptions there, the 1st rank means that you'll receive 50% of any incoming radiation as healing. At the 2nd rank, you'll receive 100% of the radiation value as health. At the final rank, 150%. So that means let's say I was swimming and I'm getting 10 rads per second. The 1st rank, I'm also healing 5 health per second. At the 2nd, 10 health. At the 3rd, 15 health per second. But you're still taking the radiation damage. Okay, so that matters. So your health bar is still coming down. It just doesn't do anything for you. There was like one time when I saw that the health it healed me a lot, and that was when I was getting shot with gamma guns. But guess what? The gamma guns quickly outclassed my health. Like, for one split second, at one moment, my total health bar and my total radiation bar were at the right levels where the trade was good. I healed a bunch and took some rads, and it was good. But then a split second later, I'm still getting hit by radiation, but now my health bar is full. No healing matters anymore. My total health is just going down at that point because the radiation has now surpassed the healing abilities. So it quickly became useless. I mean, this has no practical functionality, and it doesn't even work well with the other endurance perks. If you get Rad Resist or Lead Belly, for example, then you're losing the effect. I mean, once you reduce the radiation that's coming in, then you're also reducing the health that you're getting out of it. So there's just no point. I thought that this perk, I was very excited about this perk at first, and I think it's because the wording is unclear and a lot of people don't understand it, and I didn't either at first. I thought that the more, hopefully it would be proportional, the more radiation you had on your health bar, the more your health would regenerate. The health that you did have regenerates. So I thought this was going to be the perfect perk for our Nerd Zerker build. No, it doesn't work like that at all. The best application you can have of this perk is by using uncooked meats that have healing effects but also radiation. And then you can actually boost the healing effect by getting 150% of the radiation as healing plus the original healing, right? But why would you do that when you can just cook the meats at a cooking station for free? Get a little bit of experience, increase the amount that the meat is healing you anyways, more than the Ghoulish perk can increase that healing amount, and remove all the rads. Whereas with Ghoulish, you're still getting the rads. So, oh yeah, and just side note, random feral ghoul becomes friendly. Who cares? Okay, I mean, we have some footage of it here, and it was kind of funny. It was kind of fun. Randomly, one of the strongest ones around us was the one. So, but who cares? That's not anything to base your mind off of. Don't take Ghoulish. Don't take Ghoulish. It has virtually no use. Alrighty, and finally, at the top tier perk with 10 endurance, you can take the solar-powered perk. Okay, so the solar-powered perk is an old favorite of Fallout. At the 1st rank, gain +2 in strength and endurance between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Now, that does affect your internal clock, as we call it, so you don't have to be outside to get that. You can be indoors, and just as long as it's daytime, you're getting the +2 strength and endurance, which is nice. 2 strength and 2 endurance, that's nice. At the 2nd rank, sunlight slowly heals your radiation damage, and at the 3rd rank, sunlight slowly regenerates your lost health. Now, the wording is a little bit unclear, but I'm pretty sure that with the distinction there, where it says sunlight rather than between the hours of, this is not an internal clock thing. You need to be outdoors and externally exposed to actual sunlight in order to get those effects, right? So let's think about it. Is it worth it? Well, actually, probably not, and I'll tell you why. So you get 2 strength and 2 endurance between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. So half the time you get these benefits. Okay, so that already kind of sucks. It's not even a permanent benefit, right? But first of all, I pretty much know that you don't need that plus 2 endurance, that it's not doing much for you, because you already have 10 endurance. You have plenty of health. You don't need... I find it hard to believe that you need 2 more endurance. You have plenty of health at this point. And then you get plus 2 strength. Well, do you need the strength? Well, you might. If you're a melee character, then that's probably fine. That's an extra 20% damage. So, you know, if you're a melee character, you're exposed to a lot of hits, to a lot of gunfire as you charge up. That little bit of extra health, that plus 2 endurance, and that plus 2 strength, nothing to sneeze at. Probably okay for you. Virtually anyone else, if you're not getting anything out of that strength, and nobody else is going to get much out of that strength other than a little bit of extra carry weight. Who cares about that? 20 pounds of carry weight? Nobody cares, right? So unless you are a melee character, this main ability isn't even that useful to you, because you probably don't need the plus 2 endurance. As far as sunlight healing your radiation damage and regenerating your lost health, well, it's a perk of convenience. They are perks of convenience. They can remove some of the headache of having to manage your health bar in various ways, but it's just not that good. For example, I checked it out. The regeneration rate of the sunlight on your lost health is 3 health points per second. 3 points per second, guys. Life Giver gives you 5 points per second. And it doesn't require you to be outside during the daytime. It's constant at any time. So that health regeneration ability basically sucks. Unless you're trying to stack it on top of Life Giver to boost your total, then why would you go for this? Just go for Life Giver instead. So honestly, solar powered is probably the worst top tier perk in this game. It's just not very useful. It's just not very good. It's just a perk of convenience. So that does it for the examination of the perks. Let's just reflect on the endurance tree as a whole and whether it's worthwhile investing in heavily or not. Well, unfortunately, I think that the endurance tree is coming in dead last out of all of the special perks trees. So I'm going to put this in 7th place on the endurance tree. And that's kind of a tough choice for me. Now, as I talked about in the intro, with the health gain and the fact that it's retroactive, I would say that a point of endurance is more valuable than a point of any other special stat. That is, when you're boosting your stats and whatnot, maybe you have a drug that increases your endurance. That's more useful than a drug that increases your agility or your luck or your whatever, perception. I would say it's one of the, especially in later levels, one of the most valuable stats, but it has such underwhelming perks. The tree is terrible, honestly. There's only a couple of perks on here that I would actually want, and they're the lower level perks mainly, which is Life Giver, Chem Resistant, and maybe Adamantium Skeleton. I mean, even then, that's a stretch. There's very few perks that are actually worthwhile, that have multiple uses, that are actually like that good on this perk list. And even worse, even more silly, some of these perks work against each other. Like Ghoulish has like no use at all, and then it's even more useless if you've taken Rad Resist. So this tree is a little bit, its focus, I guess, is on survival and on avoiding being resistant to radiation in many cases with the perks. Unfortunately, just many of these perks, I mean, having Ghoulish at 9 endurance, that just makes no sense, because it's just such a bad perk. Who wants to get up to 9 endurance to get such a lousy perk? You know, so this tree is unfortunately underwhelming, but it does give you health. So I would be more likely to recommend to you to just put a stat to level up and put a special point into endurance over actually putting a perk point into any of the perks on the endurance tree. Just get more health. Get endurance for what it's good at. Get more health, and that's the real value of this tree, is just getting more health. So that just about does it here. We've taken a look at the endurance tree. I'm ranking it at 7th place, unfortunately. But guess what? It's all uphill from here. We're going to be going over charisma in our next video, and then intelligence, agility, and luck. And boy, are those some of the good ones. So stay tuned to the Bigger Pixel, and I will see you next week.